Two updates from Frank Seravalli. The first one was on Ilya Mikheyev, who finds himself at number 6, and you can pull up the excerpt here, Grady. Finds himself at number 6 on Frank's trade targets board over at Daily Faceoff. Here is what Frank had to say about it. The Canucks have been working to move Mikheyev since shortly after their playoff run concluded. They also offered him to teams around the trade deadline. After a tough playoff, Mikheyev's contract is gumming up the works on Vancouver's offseason. They can't more aggressively pursue multiple pending free agents until they can get a clearer view of their cap picture. Mikheyev scored just 1 goal in the final 61 games of the season, including the playoffs, which is hard to do. As a result, teams are asking the Canucks to attach an asset to Mikheyev to move him, something they are balking at, saying that it takes a full year to recover from ACL repair, and Mikheyev should be much better next season. Harman, do you think the Canucks actually believe that Ilya Mikheyev is going to be much better next season? Because I'm saying I don't think they fully believe that themselves. I think they believe there's a chance, but I don't think they fully believe it.
I think they believe that he'll be better and bounce back to some extent,
sure.
But I'm sure they still have concerns around. We signed him to be a top 6 forward, and we don't think he's fully going to live up to his cap hit, even if he bounces back. So I imagine that they're somewhere in the middle where they're not just saying both publicly and behind the scenes, oh, we think he's going to bounce back, just to try and convince other teams of it. I'm sure they believe it to some extent themselves, but I think we all know, even Mikheyev at his best, when he was in Toronto, when he was at his best, most disruptive, ton of defensive value, $4.75 million as cap hit was still a stretch for the value that Mikheyev brought to the table. He was ultimately a third liner in Toronto in more of a shutdown defensive type role, could chip in with a little bit of offense here or there, but he wasn't a nearly $5 million caliber player. So I can understand why they're obviously shopping him. And at this point, I'm sure all the conversations are shifting to, well, how much is it going to cost? What are the alternatives and possibilities in terms of paying a sweetener versus retaining a bit of salary? And what's the opportunity cost of having Mikheyev still on the books for this offseason?
Okay, so I've been poking around on Puckpedia, and I've been looking at what they have to offer. And one of the things that they have is a pick value thing. Like, you can look at what your pick values are. I'm going to say, does it not feel like you should be able to move Mikheyev if you attach like a 4th round pick to it?
No.
Think it's more?
No. Yeah, for sure, dude.
How much more? They got rid of Anthony Beauvillier for 1 year at, what was Beauvillier?
He was an expiring contract.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying.
And Nashville needed a top 9 body.
So that cost. What I'm saying is that cost him a 5th round pick. You can't move Mikheyev for like a 4th, maybe a 3rd.
He's got 2 full years left, man.
Yeah,
it's way easier to move expiring contracts. Like, think about it this way: the Canucks gave up a 2nd round pick to get off the last 2 years of Dickinson's contract, and Dickinson had a $2.65 million cap hit.
Okay, so Grady popped this in our chat. Puckpedia tweeted this out. If Mikheyev at 50% is considered fair value, the pick value of the 50% retention, it's an early 2nd round pick. So that's going to be interesting. What it actually comes down to, if the Canucks are actually willing to retain. I don't know. I'm poking around Puckpedia and I'm trying to figure out what it would cost. If teams want them to attach an asset, I'm trying to figure out what that asset might be.
Well, they have an expected draft pick compensation tool, which was originally sort of created by Matt Perry, who was the former director of hockey analytics for the Arizona Coyotes. And this is based off previous cap dump trades. It's not a projection that's falling out of the sky. And they had the cost at approximately a late 1st round pick, which late 1st round pick or like a 2nd round pick plus something else would sort of be the equivalent.
That's wild. I don't think the Canucks should make that trade. Like, I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah, and this is where, like, you ask yourself, is the difference of, does freeing up Mikheyev's near $5 million cap hit make the difference between being able to sign a Jake Guentzel or not? Well, probably not, because the Canucks can already afford to go after Guentzel as is. Now, if you go further down the roster needs and go, okay, after we check off a top 6 forward and perhaps spend a lot of cap dollars towards that, could Mikheyev be the difference between signing a top 4 defender at a reasonable price? if the answer is yes, then maybe you bite the bullet and give up a second round pick plus something else and trade him, because hey, when you're going out and signing a free agent, there's no acquisition cost. But for a reasonable price is the catch there, right? Because if there's a scenario where the free agent market is overpriced and you're instead doing most of your shopping on the trade market, where okay, you're going to have to give up assets, but at least the players that you're bringing in, they make sense contract wise. Well, then you have to account for the trade chips that you're going to have to potentially surrender to get a top 6 winger, to fill out the rest of your blue line, and then to also get rid of Mikheyev. You may not be able to then make deadline ads if the team's in a position to contend again next season. Now, one way the Canucks can approach this is with these inefficient contracts. The further down the road you get, i.e., the less time is left on the deal, the easier it is to move, right? Like, this is the most difficult it's probably going to get to move Mikheyev's contract, because put it this way, if you hang on to him, it only becomes easier because maybe he bounces back, right? And great, now you can either keep him, or maybe the price to get rid of him is super cheap, and now you've got that cap space to wheel and deal at the trade deadline. But even if he doesn't bounce back, the price to get rid of the deal isn't going to go up because there's less term on the contract and you've paid most of his salary for 2024-25. At that point, for an acquiring team, it's like we're acquiring him for 1 and a bit seasons, like not even a full 1.5, which is a lot more palatable. So that's why if I was in the Canucks shoes, yeah, I'd be exploring avenues. But if the price ends up being prohibitive, then I wouldn't be opposed to just holding on to him, seeing if he can bounce back, knowing that regardless of whether he does or not, I can always look to shop him mid-season, and it's not like the prices are going up.
Yep, exactly. That's kind of where I'm going with this, thinking about this situation is just like, if you actually believe that there's a chance that he's a lot better than he was this past season, then certainly you keep him. But I think, like you and I both said it earlier, he's probably going to be better next season. Like, you can't get much worse than what he was down the final stretch of the season. So
Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.